Brandon, you got a little video to kick us off? We are super excited for our guest today. You're talking about a former president of ASPA, the author of the EOB, the ERISA Outline book, probably one of the top minds on ERISA technicalities. Freaking Sal Tripodi. What's going on, Sal?
Oh, things are good. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good.
Damn good.
What brings you back on Retireholics for the second time in your career?
Just because I had so much fun in Hawaii, and I thought it would be gret to.
We did have a good time. We did have a good time. Well, you're used to it. You're
named a lot in the email.
Yeah, I did. I was begging. I was begging.
That doesn't surprise us.
Sal, you have played these games before with us, so we're going to go back to the old school game that we call prohibitive word. And if you say that word, you must drink from your nasty drink. Everybody show the audience what you got going on for your nasty drink. And if you're tuning in, if you could help us out and police it, feel free to do that in the chat box. We are drinking beer and then drinking a penalty drink. Sal's just sipping on his penalty drink the entire show, is my understanding. So there he is, like a true gentleman.
Neat, too. Good.
But let's dive right into it. We've talked about this a little bit, but we haven't really dove deep into it. I'm starting to get more and more requests from advisors and their plan sponsors about shifting their fees from like hard dollar fees that they pay us as TPA, and they want to shift it to an asset-based fee because they're struggling, right? Their businesses are hurting. They're trying to look at all their overhead, and they come to us and say, hey, we're paying you $3,000 a year. Can we stop doing that and shift it to the assets the same way we pay our record keeper, the same way we pay our advisor? How do you feel about that, given that the optics are the one reason you're doing it is because your business is struggling?
Right.
What does Sal Tripodi think about that?
I'm not crazy about that, because I think what you guys do is you provide services that really, the value of your services don't really correspond to the value of the plan assets. So it doesn't, to me, I think as a plan, I think as a,
I think you broke the last show record.
Yeah, I think you're breaking all records.
Hold on.
That's so good.
Well, let's also assume that you could cap it at $3,000. So let's assume that it doesn't grow with assets, but you're just going to take it now from the participants as opposed to writing a check for it.
If you're going to be subject to a cap, it'll be lower based on the value of fees. Does that make sense to you?
First of all, if you were a new client and you came to me and you want to have your fees asset-based, I have no problem with that. And we do that from time to time. So if you make that cognizant decision, you understand it, you're aware of it, we will do that. Whether that's just pure basis points or whether that's setting a flat dollar amount to be taken from the assets, we will totally do that if you want to. My issue with this right now is the motivation for you doing it is that you're struggling financially. And I feel like that puts a different kind of filter on it. It's like you're saying to your employees, hey, we're in tough times, we're struggling, so we're going to push this fee to you. And
so are the employees.
And extrapolate it out. That's what I was just going to say, Mark. Extrapolate it out where now you're saying if the business is struggling, the employees are likely struggling. And if the employees are likely struggling, we know the market is down. Now you're saying not only is the market down, but we're going to throw on some extra costs that you are not used to paying.
Yeah.
Like the whole flow of it is tough in this current time.
But just think about what that does for.
So is this really more about pushing because a flat fee can be pushed to the plan?
That's what we're saying is that they're oh yeah, another one. They're pushing all costs to a basis point just so that the business doesn't have to write a check for those fees.
Right. So that's fine, but they could do that. They could do that with a fixed fee that gets allocated to accounts.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't care about that. I'm just asking more about making the
You're
participant
asking more about having the plan pay where the employer used to be paying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
JD, would you have a different,
Can I ask for a new word?
Sorry, Justin, you were saying
no,
something?
yeah, would you have a different feel towards it? Meaning, you know, basing it off of plan size or actually plan size and participant size?
That's two for you, buddy.
You know, say you have
No, I think this is, now that you guys have talked more about it, I see that the real issue is the employer, doesn't matter how it's calculated. The issue is whether the employer wants to keep paying out of pocket versus the plan. And I think that's a reasonable decision for an employer to make anytime. There's no requirement for an employer to pay the expenses outside of the vehicle. So they can certainly pass that on. And remember that these accounts are really, they're not directly affecting employees till it's time to actually get paid. And if the employer frankly needs the financial assistance so the plan can stay viable, to pass on through the vehicle's account balances, that's reasonable. I think the employer has the right to do that. In some cases, should do that. So if it's necessary to be able to continue
the right to do it, yes, can't argue that. But we talked about earlier the Savers Act being a bad look, right? We're essentially saying it's benefiting those who can probably take the hit more so than the others can right now, especially right now. So you're telling me that, oh, hey, employees, we're going to cut your pay by 40%. By the way, you know, you're having other issues and your expenses don't change, but we're going to charge you more just to save money for your retirement, which is
if that's being packaged with
value as you
pay, I certainly would feel differently about it.
Right. But what I was going to say is,
but if the employer is trying to make some adjustments so it can keep the plan going, keep paying their employees, but part of that means shifting the burden of expenses more to the account balances, I think that's a reasonable thing to do.
Okay, fine.
That's the debate.
I think I'm okay with that as long as if the business owners are the one making that decision, fine, take it out of your account. It's not coming. You're not cutting a check for it. Take it out of your balance.
Oh, geez, look at you go, Mark.
Significantly higher than the people that are putting
it will come out of that person's account, though. Their account is probably higher.
Biggest one.
Could be.
The majority of the assets,
It depends.
As long as that's the case,
I get it.
Maybe I'm okay with it.
No, it's just, and also keep in mind, yes, you are taking it out of accounts, but that is different than asking employees to actually, they're not writing a check to pay for these expenses. It is coming out of their account, and maybe over time, they will be able to, you know, they'll be back in a situation where they can. This is so weird because this is so different than my politics. I can't believe it.
Chad, one second. The only thing that I worry about in the grand scheme, the bigger picture, is that they do that and make that change now, whether you agree with it or not, whether it's right or wrong, and then they don't change it in the future. If there was a way to make sure that, okay, when the dust settles and hopefully you go back to business as usual, that your cost to your vehicle goes back to what it was as well. But in my mind, right, it's just like anything else we do. Once you set it, kind of forget about it, unless you're, okay, I'll throw it back to our advisor community. Hopefully they're a part of this process and they can come back and sit with them during the review process and go, hey, remember how we adjusted that because you were having some financial troubles? That is over. We're in a good place now. Let's get back to you cutting this check because of the tax efficiency, and also your participants don't need the burden of this cost.
Well, I think you actually have hit the nail on the head. I think the key is that the advisors around these employers, whether it's the advisor, whether it's you guys or a combination, helping the employer to keep track of these kinds of things and say, you know, circle them back to the decision that was made when they were struggling and say, well, you know, you can get a separate deduction from this apart from the deduction you're getting from the plan. You were able to afford this before. Now you're back to where you need to be. I think that's a good thing to do, but I think the onus is going to be on you guys to be doing that. The employer's probably not going to do that on their own.
No.
Once they shift that to the plan and they see that they're not right